Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. As always, we cover all the home teams tonight, the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers. We'll talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll talk about proposed Superdome renovations as well. And to break it down for us, an incredible panel tonight. From WLAE-TV, Andrew Doak is with us. From WWL Radio, Seth Dunlap is with us. Gentlemen, welcome to the show as always. Thanks so much for coming down. And especially, I gotta give Andrew some props here. Andrew's coming down on his vacation here. So again, no slight against Seth, but we appreciate that as much.
You got it, man.
Okay,
doing a little jazz
fest. Little vacation day?
Yeah.
Jazz Fest, first Jazz Fest tomorrow.
It will be. Yeah, been here a year and a half, but I'm excited to partake in it this
Seth's
weekend.
a vet. He's 8 years here.
Yeah.
It's my first year. I actually won't be going to Jazz Fest since I moved. So.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'll be there. Don't worry. I'll be there. You know I'll be there. We always like to start off telling folks a little bit about what's going on at your respective stations. Andrew, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, sure. I've been coming off a week where it was really busy. It seemed like nothing was slowing down with the NFL Draft, Zurich Classic, obviously Jazz Fest starting up. So a lot of coverage when it comes to all that, but we appreciate all the support over at Channel 4, all our shows during the week, 4th Down on 4 on Sunday nights. So all you guys that tune in, please keep doing it, and hopefully we can keep churning out good content.
Yeah, we always do. So yeah, no doubt about it. Seth, welcome back. As I've said many times before, when I listen to local talk radio, this is the guy I'm tuning into every single night when he's on. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, appreciate it, buddy.
Love
Glad
it,
to have
man.
me.
Love it. Great show.
We've been busy too. We did our Draft Fest coverage last week, so it was a little insane. Now we're kind of transitioning into LSU baseball. We're going to be covering their SEC tournament run, their regional run, super regional run. So we're pretty heavy with that, and of course, as we head on into rookie camp and Saints minicamp.
Yeah, well, welcome back to the program. Let's start with Saints draft, and of course, Eric McCoy was their first pick in the second round, 48th pick. They move up to get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well, of course, moving up for both picks out of Florida, the safety in the 4th round. The 6th round, Saquon Hampton. In the 7th round, Alisai Mack, and then Caden Ellis in the 7th round, their second round pick. Andrew, I'll take you first. Your thoughts on the draft?
Well, you had to make a splash since you only went into the draft with one pick in the first 4 rounds, and you weren't picking until 62.
Right.
Of course, Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis both mentioned they didn't think that Eric McCoy was going to last until 62. And they came away with what they said were 3 players who were within their top 70. So from their big board, at least they walked away feeling pretty good, I think. And you had to be aggressive. You probably expected them to be aggressive because they'd already traded up 15 times since 07 coming into that draft. They traded up 2 more times. But I was telling Seth, even on the radio just the other day, I think this class, at the end of the day, is going to be defined by Eric McCoy, how he turns out. I would have liked to see them add another pass catcher, but it makes sense what they want to do on the offensive line. You got some guys coming up like Andrus Peat, who you're going to have to make a decision on, who's a free agent after this season. The year after that, Larry Warford's also a free agent. And you got all these young rookies coming up, as well as Mike Thomas, the class before them. So you're going to have to figure out a way to pay some of these guys, and others you're going to have to let walk. So whether Eric McCoy comes in and takes the starting center job away from Nick Easton, who we kind of presumed going into the draft would take that over, I think from every NFL draft analyst that I listened to when they picked him, they really liked Eric McCoy. And when you watched him against LSU, he was paving paths for Texas A&M running back Travion Williams. I mean, he was a stud, and he only allowed 1 sack his entire career at A&M. And it's a guy that has versatility that can play center and guard. So I think for what the Saints want to do, I think it was a great pick. And look, I think, in my opinion, for a quarterback like Drew Brees, your interior offensive line is probably the most important out of your offensive line group. That's not to take anything away from guys like Ryan Ramczyk or Teron Armstead. He's got to be able to climb the pocket. You've got to have a stalwart up the middle right there. And Eric McCoy could be that.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Seth?
Yeah, it depends on how you're going to judge this class, I suppose. If you judge it with the picks that they had, I think they did an excellent job of finding value. There's that term that I kind of don't like. It's become cliche. Like, how do you actually define value? You're defining it with the subjective arbitrary of your own list or whatever list you're going to run off of. We're not going to know the true value of this for a couple of years. But I think last time I was on your show, and I know I talked about it a lot on my show, that I felt that the Saints had a huge need at center. Nick Easton was one of the lowest rated centers, according to Pro Football Focus in the National Football League. I think Cameron Tom was 2 spots above him, so also one of the lowest rated guys. And Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis might have played a little poker with us because they never really mentioned that spot directly. They said, we're looking for linemen, never really said we're looking to replace Max Unger. Kind of told us maybe they thought they had one with Nick Easton. But everybody that I talked to, including people who had no guys inside that Saints organization, thought that they were going to make a move at that center spot. That Eric McCoy fell to them, and they were able to scoop him up there, a guy who a lot of draft experts had in the late first round, early second round. That was an incredible find for them. I usually am a guy, blanket, where I don't like teams trading up in the draft.
Right.
You just lose way too many assets that you can accumulate in the middle part of drafts, which is where organizations like the Patriots, the Ravens, the Packers, the Seahawks over the last decade have really made their hay, and one of the reasons why they're competitive and competing for championships almost every year. The Saints are doing it their own way. It's worked. I like them staying true to their aggressive style. That's not the way I would do it, but it's worked for them. These last 2 draft classes, though, I think are going to be judged by Marcus Davenport. If Marcus Davenport doesn't turn into the star that they traded up for, that they think he's going to be, that's going to taint last year's class, and it also means you gave up the picks in this year's class to move up and get him. But if you judge the class by the picks that they had, the 5 picks that they had coming in, I think they did a pretty good job of filling needs and also finding guys who just had fallen to them.
Right. You know, guys, I like the aggressive move. I don't like giving up next year's second-round pick, I'll be honest with you. Especially now with Brees maybe in the twilight of his career. As you mentioned, the building blocks for the team, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th-round picks in a lot of cases. Sometimes you get some 6th, 7th-round picks that'll come in. Saints have had a history of that. We saw last year a team that didn't have enough room for their draft picks and ultimately cut some guys that ended up on other rosters. Matter of fact, again, I think we all know, almost every single player they cut had an opportunity to be on another roster on that last cut. With McCoy, only thing that I don't question the ability. I don't question anything about what he did in college, because you look at who he went up against. They went up against stout SEC defensive linemen. A lot of those guys went early in this draft or were in last year's draft. So he's a guy that has proven himself on the field. I wonder about the transition from the college game to the pro game for at the center position, which is a very difficult position to be able to come in. You mentioned the need to be able to protect Drew Brees up the middle, and now you're possibly handing that over to again, a rookie. That'll be an interesting scenario there. But as far as the draft itself goes, I thought that they did a nice job considering, again, the number of picks they had and trying to utilize the capital they had to try to get the players that they targeted. And the way they've changed their board as well, guys, 150 players now, paring it down, character being one of the main issues for this team after the Junior Gillette fiasco within the locker room. So, again, you can't argue with the success of Jeff Ireland over the last few years.
Yeah, that's true. Look, I think last year's draft was underwhelming, and they will make the argument that the guys that left town did go make NFL rosters, and that's true. Of course, you want to make sure you identify and haul in draft picks that do make your roster, but there is a fair argument on the opposite side that says, look, with a championship roster, that's going to be harder.
It's difficult
to be able to do, because you just don't have as many spots for the bodies that you bring in, which is a fair argument. But look, I get Seth's point, which you don't, and your point too. You don't like giving away future draft picks because there is value, and especially when you saw a draft like this deep into the draft, there was still value there. At least what we believe right now. Right. We'll see how it plays out. But I think in this win now championship mode, look, they've got a credit card bill that's running up, but they're just they're just moving it to the next season.
Yes.
And it's kind of a win at all costs mode right now. And if that means they only get 1 or 2 guys in the NFL draft at this point in time, I think that they look at that as a win. And the positive, I think, from Nick Easton and Eric McCoy's standpoint is that I don't think you have to come in and have all the pressure on you to be the center.
Right.
You have some versatility there and some options because you got 4 different guys who can play center for the Saints. Realistically, in my mind, probably only 3 because either Will Clapp or Cameron Tom are probably going to one of them hit the chopping block.
True.
Whenever it's all said and done, because I don't think you keep 4 centers on the roster. But you got options, I guess, is a good feeling. And look, someone like Gardner Johnson could come in and replace what Kurt Coleman was for you last year. And if he gave you that and just at a little bit higher level performing, that'd be a win too.
And in the later rounds, they went after guys that were special teams phenoms, guys that could play the special teams, which is something they put an emphasis on.
Yeah, they obviously had a need at safety, not maybe this year, but certainly looking forward. If you look at the guys who are going to be free agents at the end of this season, I don't think people realize that you have about a third of this roster, and the third that a lot of them have starting jobs. I mean, it's Drew Brees. It's guys like Andres Pete, David Onyemata, and A.J. Klein, Patrick Robinson, Ken Crawley. I could go on here, but this is probably their last best shot in this window to win a title. But I don't think Sean Payton's going anywhere. Mickey Loomis isn't going anywhere. Jeff Ireland's probably going to get another job, shot at a GM somewhere, so he might be. Let's hope not for here. But for his sake, he's probably going to get that job. But this is one of the reasons why I'm not trying to play both sides of this. Right. I like what they did in moving up to get McCoy because I really felt that they had a need.
I agree.
And I like that they filled that. However, when you have the exodus that is coming this offseason, and it's coming, they cannot fit all these guys under the salary cap. That's why I would have liked to see them accumulate even more picks in the 4th, 5th, 6th round somehow. Of course, it's a little hard with the draft picks that they had coming in, only one in the top 100. But it's going to be an issue going forward. I don't think they had the talent drop off from last year to this year. But if you look at this year and you kind of project ahead to next year, I'm not trying to bum anybody out here. I'm just trying to be realistic that this is going to be their last best shot unless something unexpected happens here. And you never know exactly what's going to happen with Drew.
Well, you're from the Northwest. You saw it with Seattle. I mean, Seattle had the same situation. You look at with what's happening right now with getting rid of a lot of really good players. They got to pay a quarterback now. We saw it with San Francisco. Again, draft choices in the top 5 for so long. And then, again, they get to the point where they're a Super Bowl contender. They get to the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden they got to pay guys. Guys are gone. To your point, I talked about it the other day on the show. Next season, Michael Thomas, you mentioned Bridgewater, Breeze, Pete, Bell, Onyemata. The following year, Kamara, Jordan, Rankins, Wolford, Cook, Edwards, Hendrickson, Davis, and Anzalone. So over the next couple of years, you got to pay a lot of players.
Yeah, no, and Eric, this is, if you're going to be aggressive, the Saints style to be aggressive in the draft and trade away picks to move up and grab guys that you think can fill needs, now's the time where you can do that, where you don't have a lot of roster spots. We just talked about it. There weren't going to be 7 or 8 guys coming in from the draft class or UDFA that are actually going to make this roster. However, going forward, I would like to see them reevaluate how aggressive they are in trading up. You mentioned Seattle here. Seattle came into the draft with 4 picks. They left with 11.
Amazing. 11
picks out of 4, and most of those came through the 3rd through 6th rounds. Now, they've got to develop those guys, but that's just something to look forward down the road. We're going to have a lot of these free agents that don't come back. You're going to have starting jobs open and the primary backup spots open. That next year down the road, I wonder if Jeff Ireland, if he has a lot of influence, which we hear he does, and that draft room says, okay, guys, if we're going to alter our strategy and our aggressiveness a little bit, maybe next year's the year to do that.
You know, guys, you brought up Jeff Ireland. If I am Mickey Loomis, if I'm Sean Payton, based on what he's done to take this team from 3 straight 7-9 seasons to back to Super Bowl contender, I do what I got to do to keep Jeff Ireland, right?
Yeah, sure. I think at the same time, too, if there is a max exodus of players, which there will be because there's only a certain amount of guys that can get paid, if that means that's on the heels of your 2nd Super Bowl title, I think a lot of people would look around and be like, I'm okay with that, that we got to rebuild. But look, down the line, I know in the next couple of years, and I'm more of the thought process of I agree with them being aggressive right now. They're going to have to figure out a way to be able to maybe approach things a little bit differently. But I think whether it's Sean Payton on the field or Sean Payton in the war room, that's just their nature. That's how they go about it, and that's their process that they feel like works for them. And sometimes it's just tough to teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah. needs now going forward for this team as the second now, let's say, the next wave of free agency happens? We know they brought in some undrafted guys. Not a lot of room for those guys, but yet I think 3 undrafted free agents made the team last year. Your thoughts?
I still think you need to add a defensive end, maybe Ziggy Ansah. We know he's still out there. He could be someone who could come in on a 1-year deal potentially and help the Saints, and there's been mutual interest there. But I also think you need, we'll see what the Saints think, but I also think that you need another receiver, like especially one in the slot to be able to help you out. Now, maybe their decision not to pick a receiver in this draft speaks to their confidence in Traquan Smith picking up the offense, being a more physical player this season. Maybe they have more confidence in Cam Meredith and his knee, coming off of 2 straight seasons where he had knee issues. But they obviously know more than me in those meeting rooms. What I do know is last season, I don't think those guys were going to be enough to be able to hold you over. Now, you did bring in Jared Cook, who I think is going to be a great fit for them, and someone that you were looking at the tight end position since Jimmy Graham left town. But as much attention as I think he's going to take away from Michael Thomas, I still think you need another guy with speed who's going to be able to help you out in a different way.
Right. Seth, both subjects. Making sure Jeff Ireland stays here long term, and then the needs left on this team as they get into training camp.
I'm just going to be honest. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to keep Jeff Ireland around. If he's going to get a job as either the president or a front general manager at another organization, that's a job, if the pay is equitable or he gets a pay bump, that he's probably going to take. I know the Saints are going to do everything they can, title-wise, money-wise, to keep him around. We'll see what happens. There's one major hole for me on this team still, major being relative to the rest of the roster, and that's that nickel cornerback spot. I don't know if Patrick Robinson's going to be the same coming off that injury when he's 33 years old. We got P.J. Williams. You don't know what Sean Payton thinks of him right now, if he's how deep he's in that doghouse. Ken Crawley has not been good at that spot before. I don't like what they have at that third cornerback spot. I just don't, and I think that's going to be a liability when you face a team like the Rams, who are in that 13 personnel the entire game. Outside of that, interior defensive line, they focused on that in free agency, but David Onimana is going to be facing a suspension. Sheldon Rankin is likely going to miss time this season, coming back from that injury. That's a spot where I don't think you can add right now. And then you mentioned Ziggy Ansah, because we just don't know. Now, a lot of people think Marcus Davenport is the truth, and a lot of people think Marcus Davenport's going to come back and play like he was before that injury, when he looked like kind of a rising young star in the league, but we just don't know. We just don't know. So they've got to have more depth behind him at that spot, I believe.
Anything you can add as far?
I still really like Marcus Davenport. And I think, as Seth mentioned, it was a good point that Marcus Davenport could define this class coming in, given what you gave up in the first round in order to take him the year before. I just thought he showed way too many flashes of someone with elite talent. And he just kind of had some bad breaks where he hurt his hand, before they even started the season. Then, obviously he gets hurt, nicked up during the year. But I would agree. I think you have some big question marks with Sheldon Rankins being out. I think anyone thinking that he comes back as quickly as Alex Okafor and is maybe here like in October, that might be a little generous to think he can come back that quick.
Yeah, that position is much more physical than obviously a defensive end.
No question. Look, I think along that defensive line, that was such an area of strength for them last year. Now they have some question marks because they just don't have all the pieces that they had going into last season. And Alex Okafor, don't discredit that guy. He was really a playmaker and found his fit whenever he came from Arizona to the Saints. So you need someone else, I think, to be able to balance out Marcus Davenport, because at the end of the day, I don't think everybody realizes how consistent Cam Jordan is and how many snaps he plays every game. The guy is a diesel machine when it comes to his actual, how fit he is and how durable he is throughout the course of an NFL season. So I think that's a good point by Seth.
Right. Seth, player in this draft you think can make an immediate impact, or players, and then maybe 1 or 2 undrafted free agents that kind of caught your eye that think maybe have a chance to make the team?
I can't, on the undrafted free agent side, there's just not enough spots on here. I know everybody goes into that class and thinks that because it happened when the Saints were kind of rebuilding that they had 4 or 5 guys. But I'm not just trying to go back to McCoy, but I do think Eric McCoy is going to be the guy that probably comes in and is a day 1 starter. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I know Sean Payton loved the kid. He's a little brash, got a little bravado, which frankly Sean
He's
likes.
a playmaker.
And his defenders, that's one of the reasons they loved Marshawn Lattimore. He's a talker. One of the reasons they like DeMario, he's a little bit of a talker on the field too. And now they got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who has a chance also to step in and play a big role in the base defense and be a special teams guys. Those are the two that I really like. And I do like the prospect of Alize Mack. He's a 7th round pick for a reason. He was banged up. He never reached his potential over at Notre Dame. But they still don't have the young guy behind Jared Cook at the tight end spot. They just don't. They've been searching for that really since Jimmy Graham, and they just haven't been able to find one, either in free agency or in the draft. So keep an eye on him. Bobby Aver and I were having a bet on which one of these draft picks, besides Mack, do you think might have the best pro career? And I said, I'll put a little wager on Alize Mack. Just a little low buy-in, high value, maybe potential down the road.
There you go. Your thoughts, Andrew?
I don't know if I misheard. You mentioned that he was like the #1 tight end out of high school, coming out of the country.
There was. Yes.
Which is, shows you like the potential, obviously, that
I don't
he
know
had.
if there was a fit at Notre Dame for him.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
And so, and he had some off the field issues too. Maybe that hurt his draft stock a little bit as well. Look, I'm not gonna reach, because I don't think there's any player outside of the 2nd round selection that's like a guarantee, in my opinion, that's going to make this roster. So I'll go with Eric McCoy, and I really think that he's going to be a day one difference maker, whether he's a starter or not. But I do like the pick of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And I really think that he could make a significant impact, away from Eric McCoy, whether it's on special teams or just rotationally as a safety. Because look, some of these guys get good minutes, but they're only playing like 40% of the time, and they can still make plays with all the safeties and with the 3 safety look that the Saints like to play.
I am interested to see Luther Ellis. Luther Ellis is his dad. Caden Ellis, in the linebacker who plays special teams role. When you got the pedigree there, and you're son of a former NFL player, he's going to know exactly what's expected of him in the league. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him have a big special teams role, not only this year but going forward. I don't think he projects as any kind of starting linebacker or a base defense kind of guy. But when you have the NFL pedigree there and you've got that head on your shoulders, I do think that there's a pretty good chance that he makes the roster.
And this team has an emphasis on special teams players now. So they'll bring a guy in and keep him just for special teams if ultimately that is his forte, and obviously he's doing it well. I'll go with McCoy and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well, but I'll throw out Little Jordan Humphrey at the slot position, the wide receiver from Texas.
Great name.
Because, no doubt, because it is a need for this team, a slot receiver. Now, again, there was some discrepancy over his time. The question for him is, can you get open? Can you catch the ball? Can you be involved in this timing offense and be where you need to be? And I guess we'll find that out through mini camp and training camp if ultimately, again, the snub was on speed, because we've seen guys on this team play the slot that didn't have great speed. A guy like a Lance Moore that ultimately, again, played a lot of years for this team and was very, very effective.
I would agree with you. That would be a name that definitely caught my eye out of the undrafted free agents. And, look at just being a guy who went to Texas Tech and who's from Austin, from Big 12 country. I had a chance to watch him a decent amount this year, and he's just a playmaker on the field.
Talk about it, please.
Well, he's just a playmaker on the field, and from a physical standpoint, he's a mismatch for a lot of people, especially if you put him in the slot, because he's a really tall player. His wingspan's really wide, and he's not someone, I guess, that once you saw his combine numbers come out, that's going to blow people away compared to some of the top end talent, but he's just one of those guys that when you put him on the field, he's a gamer. And so I think that if there's one undrafted free agent that can catch your eye out of Power 5 competition, that was one that stood out to me, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's on an NFL roster somewhere once the season begins.
Yeah, and especially because, again, the Saints have a need for a slot receiver.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I cheat?
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
Can I say Trayvon Durrell? Because anybody was out at camp last year. Now, he got an injury before the regular season. He was kind of a special team standout, and most people thought, hey, this kid might actually have a chance to make the roster. We'll see when he comes back. But I do think Trayvon Durrell fills a role that Sean loves to have, guys who can play receiver and also play special teams. I'm really interested to see how he comes back off that injury.
And Seth, it's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of people forgot he's even on the roster because he's been injured the last 2 years, and it really hasn't come back from that injury at LSU and not been the same player. It's been a couple of years now. It'd be interesting to see if he's really kind of come back and maybe can, again, he's got to know the offense inside and out by now, right? He's been there for 2 years.
You'd hope.
Yeah, no, he does, yeah. And again, it's, he's not going to crack that top 4 receivers unless something goes really wrong.
Right.
And then the Saints are in trouble anyways. But he does have a chance to be the gunner on special teams. He was beating double teams left and right. right last year before that injury. When we were watching training camp, it was pretty impressive to watch. So.
Great call. Seth Dunlap of WWL Radio, Andrew Doak of WLAE-TV are our guests tonight. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll take a quick break. We come back, we'll talk about proposed Superdome renovations. We'll get into David Griffin and also the New Orleans Pelicans, and we'll talk about LSU and Will Wade as well. All that coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't move.
Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Well, welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Seth Dunlap of WWL Radio, Andrew Doak of WLAE-TV. Yesterday, a big blockbuster news story about the possibility of Superdome renovations, maybe overshadowed only by the New Orleans Advocate and the New Orleans Times-Picayune becoming one newspaper that broke today, and that is huge news in this part of town, no doubt about it. But $450 million renovation. The deal would coincide with a 10-year extension of the Saints lease, which would keep them here till 2035. The project now will be split, a lot different than what we've seen in the past with these renovations. The Superdome Commission would come up with approximately $207 million. The Saints would come up with $150 million, and the state about $93 million based on the numbers they have today. Now, this still has to be approved by the State Bond Commission, and a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about is conceptual from what I understand in an interview that I heard with Corey Johnson and Mike Haas, who is the spokesman for the Superdome and also SMG. As part of what they'd like to do with the renovation, they would like to reimagine the lobbies at the corners of the stadium on Porters and Champion Square. They're going to remove the sideline pedestrian ramps leading to the fans of the Loge, Club, Suite, and Terrace levels of the building, replacing them with escalators and steps, which again would open up the concourses and allow the concourses to be a little bit larger. And we know, again, you get into a Saints game or into a big event in the Dome, and those concourses get jam-packed. This will allow more room there. There'll be new east and west sideline club lounges. There'll be an expanded 300-level luxury box suites, new in-zone field-level box suites, expanded Loge, Plaza, and Terrace-level concourses, as I just mentioned, new in-zone corner standing room only viewing sections that we see in a lot of the newer stadiums, expanded team store retail outlets and Saints Hall of Fame, and a new visiting locker room. Construction would take place in 4 phases, starting after the Saints NFC Championship game in the Dome. Fingers crossed on that one. And then, or either the college football playoff, and it would happen over a 4-year period. It would not affect Essence Festival. It would not affect the football championship, nor the NCAA Final Four, which is going to be in New Orleans in 2022. They hope to have this done before the Super Bowl in February 4th, 2024, Super Bowl 58, which will be hosted here in New Orleans. Gentlemen, this is a lot, and I'd love to have you guys on today because you guys can come at it from a different perspective than a native New Orleanian. We love this building. This building for us is akin to the St. Louis Cathedral, to the Presbyterian, to Jackson Square. Some have said you talk about New Orleans and the preservation of old New Orleans buildings and our history. This is kind of the new age of New Orleans history and buildings. There's a love in this state for that building. One of the reasons why, again, they have not gone with a new stadium, the fact that the state is always cash-strapped. Some people say you need to tear it down and start all over again to keep up with these modern buildings. In New Orleans and Louisiana, we don't feel that way. You guys come at it from a different perspective. You coming from the Northwest, you coming from Texas. What are your thoughts about putting $450 million in a building that is over 40 something years old.
From a financial standpoint, Saints president Dennis Lausches said that this is essentially going to save them and the city and the whole group $1 billion of what it would. He said it would take $1.8 billion to completely make a new stadium. From a sentimental standpoint, even only having been here for a year and a half, look, I get it. I mean, it's a building that survived Katrina. It's seen a lot of football games, had a lot of special moments inside of it. And probably even removing or expanding certain parts of it, there's a nostalgia that you're, affecting a little bit. I'm sure I even talked to our photographer, Adam Ney. He said one thing that he was kind of upset about was that they're removing those running ramps that that go up on the sides, because he just remembers as a kid running up and down those.
Yes.
So it's just certain things like that I wouldn't even think about. But for people who have been here for years and grown up their entire lives here, it totally makes sense. But look, I think New Orleans, the way that they are, the tradition that they have, I understand it completely. But I think at the end of the day, you do have to make renovations to be able to keep up with the times.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also special not to build a new spaceship like all these other stadiums that are being built, because sometimes it doesn't always have a homey feel, and maybe just some renovations can spice it up a little bit. And look, it's also what we got coming up are not only some big events, but also the Super Bowl is going to be here in 2024. Yes. You got to plan ahead for those types of things. And whether or not you made giant renovations like their plan is right now, you were going to have to make some type of renovations no matter what, because that's just what comes with the territory of hosting a new Super Bowl. So this seems like the rational time to make these moves and to try to just make it an overall better game day experience for fans that are going to the Superdome on Sundays.
Seth, your take, because again, we saw Seattle implode the Kingdome and go with that brand new stadium. We see brand new stadiums all over. Look, we're in between Atlanta and Dallas. The stadium's there. What's going on in Houston with their stadium, which again, 2004 now, and that's when they built that stadium, which in today's time is old.
Yeah.
Your thoughts? I mean, I know you get it. I know both you guys get how we feel here, but your thoughts?
Well, there was a big difference what the Kingdome was and what the Superdome was. The Kingdome was a dump. That was a place that, sure, the people remembered all the Mariners games and the runs that they had there, and some of the early Seahawks games and the big World Expos that were there. That place was a dump. That's not the Superdome. And frankly, it would be really hard to image New Orleans without the Superdome. Yeah. It's kind of like imagining Boston without Fenway or Chicago without Wrigley. Maybe a little bit of a good analogy is New York with New Yankee Stadium against Old Yankee Stadium. I talked to a lot of Yankees fans who still complain that they miss the feel and the history that was at Old Yankee Stadium. $400 million plus. That is, and that's only a renovation. That's basically building half a new facility or a quarter of a new facility here. The one thing that I love about this is that it's not all going to corporate America. It's not going to luxury suites. Yes. It's not going to make the Saints a lot more money. They could have put that $400 million
by design, right?
By design. This is a fan experience thing. I think the seats, the standing room only on the corners and the lower bowl, I never really liked that. I don't know how. I know you're going to be able to get more people in, and I know there's going to be lower price, so the fans who maybe couldn't afford other tickets or get into the Superdome, that's a way where they get in. I get that. I don't know how great of a fan experience that is, but I do love that this is more of a fan experience, renovation and expansion, than it is one just to make the Saints and the city as much money as possible.
Guys, it's been contentious in the past. Benson using the Saints as leverage, the late Tom Benson, to get Superdome renovations, threatening to leave. I mean, from Mississippi to San Antonio after Katrina, before that, Los Angeles. I mean, we heard it all. And what I like more than anything else about this time around is, and let's not get it wrong here, because let's face it, the Saints did put in money into the new screens, the video boards. That was when Tom Benson was alive. Seems to be a new feel out there with Gayle Benson, though. Okay, there was not a contentious negotiation here. This was three entities coming together with the governor's blessing, and to be able to put this plan together. This was, as Dennis Lausches mentioned, you just mentioned, Seth, about the fan experience, not trying to make more money for the Saints. Basically, it was a wash for them, as he said. It's just a different feel now from the Pelicans to the Saints with Gayle Benson there, because no one feels like there's a gun to their head this time that you got to either blow up the dome and start over, you got to do these renovations. as you mentioned, these renovations are necessary to continue to keep up with these with these new modern stadiums and to be able to continue to host these big time events that, again, are the lifeblood of our city. Look, I said it on my radio show. Go look at the stats now. Gambling and tourism have surpassed oil and gas in terms of the dollars that the state is making, tax dollars. So again, like it or not, you better embrace it. And if you're looking at big-time events in New Orleans, you better have a venue that can handle that, a modern venue that can keep up with these major stadiums.
The two places, whenever I first came to New Orleans, that I wanted to go to, especially from a tourist standpoint, and now it's kind of changed now that I've lived here a little bit longer, but we're Bourbon Street and the Superdome. And you want to go check those two places out because those are the first things that you think of when you think of New Orleans. So an investment into a place that has so many memories and it's going to continue to create memories throughout the years to come. I think it's always a great investment. And look, sometimes I think when you change ownership as far as like who's leading the way with Mrs. Benson, sometimes a woman's touch is a good thing. I'll tell you what. I mean, she obviously has a background with interior design and whatnot, and look, that can help for an overall experience. And I think it's been great so far.
It has not been the gun to the head type of situation that we saw in the past year. Everything she has done, everything she has set up to this point, I think New Orleans have embraced it.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to the Pelicans later.
Yes,
but
we are.
That's, I guess, Exhibit A of exactly how she's proving and trying to show through action that she cares about the city. The Superdome, though, I got to keep up with the Joneses here. I got to keep up with Jerry's World, with Lucas Oil Stadium and IMG. All these stadiums, the newer ones that are hosting Super Bowls, NCAAs, college football playoffs. If New Orleans wants to keep the Superdome and wants to have those events here, they had to make a serious investment, and I think they realized that.
Right, and look, I cannot imagine the New Orleans skyline without the Superdome in it. I mean, I don't know who at this point how you could. I mean, pre-1975 maybe so. And again, I watched that thing being built. A lot of us did, and I don't think anybody can imagine it. And I like what you said, Seth. You talked about Fenway. A lot of us feel that when you talk about Lambeau Field, when you talk about Soldier Field, as far as NFL stadiums go, this is as iconic as any of those stadiums.
Well, it's tourism, and I'm going to go back to my Yankees example. People inside the Yankees organization and sports writers up there have detailed just how much revenue and tourism they have lost that's directly attributed to the demolishing of old Yankee Stadium and making new Yankee Stadium. It's a great stadium, and 30, 40 years down the road, people probably won't really remember the old Yankee Stadium. They'll be embracing that one. But I think that a lot of people thought it was a mistake that they didn't just revamp, remodel, and renovate old Yankee Stadium. And I'm glad that, to be frank, that we're not making the same mistake down here.
Right. And look, from a financial standpoint, it makes sense for Gail Benson. She just purchased the Hyatt Hotel. She has the two parking lots that were the old New Orleans Center, Champion Square. For the most part, the Saints and Pelicans derive all the revenue from the New Orleans Arena, aka Smoothie King Center, and also the Superdome. So there's a business aspect to this as well. But I give a lot of credit to her. I give a lot of credit also to Governor Edwards, who seems to be a guy that can put a deal together. We didn't hear anything about, again, contentious negotiations behind the scenes. This seemed to be a very smooth situation, which is something we haven't seen here in New Orleans in the past.
Well, thank goodness for that, because there's still a lot of people that are bitter. You talk to the Old Guard fans, I know you know this, Eric, that are still bitter about how Tom Benson handled those situations with the Saints. For all the good that he'd done here in the city, there's still a section of the fan base and the population here that aren't going to forgive an ownership group for that. Right. Glad we're not going down that path again.
Some will forgive, but probably most will never forget. That's for sure. Let's shift gears to LSU. Scott Woodward is named the new athletic director. Your thoughts?
I like it. He's coming in a tricky situation right now. Look, you got a lot of sports that are in a really good spot right now, and of course, the front porch of your university is your football program, and you got to like where they are right now, especially when you see what they're doing on the recruiting trail as well. But look, when it comes to Scott Woodward, I think it was the right hire at the right time. I think they needed to close the door and leave the chapter behind on Joe Oliva, because it had just gotten so malicious between him and donors and the leaders within LSU and the fan base, that it was, when it came to the Will Wade situation and the suspension, which in my opinion was totally correct, and he didn't have any other choice than to suspend him, fans were still mad at him, and it was like he couldn't win for losing. So I think it was a good move no matter what, to be able to just open a fresh chapter, move on to someone who considers this home and has done a great job in the past at Texas A&M where he came from. But look, the first big situation that he's going to have to handle as it continues to develop, as this Will Wade situation. It's not fun, I would imagine, from his standpoint to just be handed that and be like, look, we're really happy to have you here. You also got to figure out this mess.
Yeah, no doubt. Your thoughts on Scott Woodward?
Yeah, I heard you mentioned Corey Johnson's show. I was driving in here and I heard Scott talking to Corey Johnson, and he was talking about the Will Wade situation and how he's kind of deferring to a team of lawyers and they're going to handle it. And that's never a situation that you want to start your tenure at LSU with. Anybody I think everybody knows now where I stand on this.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how Scott Woodward handles this situation effectively, because he is, and whether he will never say this, but we know it's true, he's beholden to the people who got him that job. Taft, the boosters, those inside the administration, those inside of the board of directors that didn't like how F. King Alexander and Joe Oliva handled the Will Wade situation, thought he threw him under the bus. I don't agree with that, but that was the final straw, and that's what broke that camel's back. Now Scott Woodward is here. Outside of that, his resume is impeccable. It's really tough for me to praise somebody who was the AD at my rival school at the University of Washington. What he did at UW was sensational.
Talk about it, please.
He put every single one of their programs, and not just the revenue sports. I'm not just talking about football and basketball. I'm talking about softball, volleyball, swimming. All these programs were now on the national stage. He is a very good listener. He talked about that. He cares about not just the revenue sports, which I think is important, especially at LSU. And he's had success everywhere he goes. And there's nothing bad that I can say about that hire. However, with this Will Wade situation, the cloud lingering over the entirety of the LSU program, it's going to be really interesting to see how he navigates that, because he started in politics. He was behind the scenes in the Louisiana legislature, and he's going to need to use his political skills to navigate that, because I don't know how he makes the people who got him that job happy while also maintaining some kind of semblance of credibility to a moral and ethical standard that he's talked about he wants to set at LSU.
Yeah, guys, I call him the ultimate insider, because of his political ties, understanding the political part of Louisiana, and of course LSU is as political of a school that's out there. Understanding again the boosters, what's going on there, understanding again the what's going on inside and out at LSU. He's kind of the perfect guy for the job, because he brings all those situations to the table. But I'm with you, Seth. Look, I stood behind Will Wade early, and I've said before that, again, if you want to clean up college basketball, you don't start with LSU and Will Wade, you start with the Blue Bloods. But I don't know how you can look past everything that's been said, everything that has come out to this point, and we don't know down the line what will happen in terms of an FBI investigation after this. If individuals that have now been convicted will be asked to turn evidence against coaches, against other individuals who are involved in this. What NCAA investigations will happen down the line here that, again, may have a bullseye on the LSU basketball program. We all know about lack of institutional control, and LSU has done everything through Joe Oliva to mediate that, through their attorneys, to make sure they're doing everything the NCAA wants them to do going forward. But, I mean, first it was on the federal transcript, the federal wiretap, the transcript of that, it was the international player, right? Trying to get the international player. And then it was the, strong-ass offer for Javonte Smart, the NBA minimum, which was, about $78,000. And then recently, again, it was Book Richardson, the former assistant coach at Arizona, testifying that a conversation that he had with Will Wade, offering $300,000 to Naz Reid. Now, that seems a little mind-boggling, okay, $300,000, but, and that's Book Richardson, who's already been convicted, who, again, is on the stand here, and there was it wasn't like they had a wiretap, that was hearsay, but still, how much more can come out, and how much can you stand behind your man ultimately if this continues to shower the program? How do you recruit? How do you hold on to players?
Well, here's the thing with Will Wade. If you're going to plant your flag in the free Will Wade camp, then go ahead and do that. We'll disagree, but let's not try to skew the facts here. The facts are that just a couple of days ago, it wasn't just his testimony. This was an undercover camera videotape that caught Book Richardson talking about this offer from Will Wade. Then you had Moon Stanesh come in and corroborate that when he was under oath. You go back to last year in the federal trial. You had the wiretap played, and again, that's a wiretap. That's not testimony. That is a wiretap play where Will Wade was on it talking about Koprivica, the international player. Then you had the Javonte Smart situation. You know what's interesting about Scott Woodward here? With the goodwill and the capital that he already has with the fan base here, if they have to make a move, And I'm starting to believe that sooner rather than later, they're just going to have to do it because you look at the recruiting class, guys, it's abysmal. I think it's 93rd in the country right now. They still have a 5-star guy and a 4-star guy that they say are soft interest, not hard interest in the program. But you're talking about setting your program back a half decade here. If there's one guy who could make the move that LSU fans would say, look, he's our guy, we hired him, we loved him, he can make it at Scott Woodward. If Scott Woodward decides he wants to cut bait here with Will Wade, and he can now because of this, with the new contract that was renewed, he's the guy that could do it, and frankly, I'm hoping that Scott Woodward makes that move.
Right, and of course, Seth is alluding to the changes in the contract for Will Wade to be reinstated, $250,000 bonus gone, and then LSU can release him with cause for level 1 or level 2 NCAA violations without any opportunity for Will Wade to sue the university as well. Why don't you take the whole 9 yards for us? Take Will Wade, take Scott Woodward, what he's going to do. How does Scott Woodward get past this? How can Will Wade survive this with everything that's going on?
The tricky part is, though, LSU doesn't have cause right now to be able to fire him. We will see if that happens if an NCAA investigation goes on after this federal trial is done. Now, something that you always need to keep in mind when it comes to an NCAA investigation, their philosophy and their rules are that if they believe there's enough there to hand down a level 1 violation or a level 2 violation or impose postseason bans, they don't have to have a smoking gun, as people have most popularly said over the last month or couple months. They don't have to have a burden of proof. They are not required to do that. They can see fit and hand down the violations and the postseason bans and all of that and sanctions to a school based on the information that they gather. If they believe that they have enough, they can go ahead and do that. This isn't a criminal case when it comes to an NCAA investigation. They don't have to prove that you fully have participated in this. If they just feel like the information that they've gathered and they've been given themselves by someone else, whoever they've talked to, if they feel like their sourcing is right, they can do whatever they want to do. So that's something to keep in mind, because I feel like there's a lot of discrepancy between a federal investigation going on and you're innocent until proven guilty. With the NCAA, that's not how this works. But from Scott Woodward's standpoint, it's a really tricky situation because I don't think anybody out there, even around LSU or anyone who is a part of Yahoo that's writing these articles, they know that Will Wade is a very talented coach. But the fact is, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you kind of have to wait this out if you're LSU, because at this point you can't cut ties with them, because if you do, you're on the hook for a lot of money. So you almost just have to wait. And then what that would mean, even if you were to go along with what the NCAA wants you to do and follow every direction that they have, they would probably still lay down sanctions against you because you still were employing this coach and you didn't have any reason to be able to fire him. So I'm really interested to see how this complete situation pans out, because right now it kind of seems like we're at a standstill and nobody can really make the next move with their chess piece because they don't have the ammunition to be able to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you both, and I'll comment as well. Do you think Will Wade is on the bench when the Tigers open up their basketball season next year?
Boy, that's a tough one. Right now, I'd lean yes, just because it seems like the groundswell of support is there. And frankly, the NCAA, either they've been neutered or they just don't care, which frustrates the heck out of me. I think the NCAA is just as much to blame as Will Wade or the LSU program for this. And everybody who says, well, it's not just Will Wade, you're right, it's not just Will Wade. This is an institutional problem in college basketball. It's not everybody that does it. I can go over the list of programs that I don't believe are involved in this, the Blue Bloods, if you want to use that word, the Villanovas. Michigan and John Beilein has been a crusader against this. He's on record saying, I want all these coaches fired, and I want all these coaches put on probation. Mark Few the same way at Gonzaga. So you can win, and you can make Final Fours and compete for titles without doing this stuff. No, it's not Will Wade. Is it unfair that LSU and he is being made an example of? Maybe, but he made his own bed here. However, people acting like Will Wade is some kind of God's gift to college basketball coaching. Frankly, he hasn't made it past the Sweet 16 since he's been coaching. And LSU, with the money, the funds, and really with an athletic director that is respected by everybody across the country as Scott Woodward, if they make a move on from Will Wade, they're going to be able to lure premier basketball talent here from a coaching position. I firmly believe that, but the longer you let this linger and the longer you plant your flag and you're unwilling to move from that, the more damage it does to the basketball program, which I am somebody who cares deeply about college basketball, and I am somebody who cares deeply about this program. I want to see them succeed. I want to see them be a consistent NCAA tournament team, an SEC title team. I do not see that happening right now with this cloud that's over them, and that's one of the reasons why I'm frustrated as heck with this, Eric.
Right. Your thoughts? Will he be on the bench when they open up the season?
Gun to my head, I would say yes.
Okay.
But that's because I don't know if the FBI doesn't seem to have any desire to want to, work with the NCAA.
At least not right now until the
At least
trials
not
are
right
over.
now.
Right.
At least not right now. But the FBI even has a history of just being like, look, this is our business. And I think a lot of them don't even want some of these college basketball coaches involved. They just want to go after the guys who were the middlemen. And I think they think that the middlemen, like Christian Dawkins, are trying to loop college basketball coaches into this to try and deflect attention away from themselves. And I think they don't like, I don't think they like that move. And I feel like they find it very disrespectful. But I would say yes. But that's just because I don't see the FBI handing over those wiretaps to the NCAA where they can actually hear the audio, because no one's heard the audio. Right. And that's the kicker right now, is that we see the transcripts, we know how bad everything is, but we just can't prove it without a doubt because we haven't heard the audio.
I'll say no. I'll say he will not be on the bench. I just think that more and more stuff's going to come out. It's going to be to the point where Scott Woodward is going to have to make a move here to be able to, again, save the program and to keep the NCAA out of Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear about, do you believe that Scott Woodward has the political capital and the cachet to make that move where the fans wouldn't be quite as upset?
I think he does now because of who he is coming in, and I think he will explain to the fan base, hey, it's not something that we wanted to do at this point. For the good of the program, for the good of the reputation of LSU, we got to do this. And I was a guy that was in Will Wade's camp, okay? I mean, I planted that flag with Save Will Wade. At this point, it's just too much, and you got to move on. You just got to move on. Let's grab a couple calls, and we're going to get into some Pelicans. Tom is in Metairie. Tom, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, guys, I have a question about the Saints and also LSU. So now the draft is over. Do you guys think the Saints are still the strongest team in their division? And number two, LSU, after seeing who didn't get drafted, we had 3 or 4 players only. So Coach O did a pretty good job with maybe not a lot of talent. How do you think he turned a corner with recruiting in Louisiana? Because it seems like things have improved dramatically lately. Now hang up and listen.
Thanks, guys. Andrew, you want to take it first?
Well, I think
Saints strongest team still in the NFL?
I still would say so, because I felt like they were. Did he say in the NFL or just in the division? Either way, I think they're one of the top 2 or 3 in the NFL in their division, no question. I think that coming out of free agency, I think they made moves necessary. You don't like losing Mark Ingram, but replacing with Jared Cook, then also replacing with Latavius Murray, I think those were great moves to try and save face and even build upon the roster that you already had. So I still think the Saints are one of the top teams in the NFL. When it comes to LSU, I think I don't know what I attribute Coach O's recent success. I mean, I think it's kind of taken me by surprise as much as anyone else. But he's obviously, I think when you come off of a season where you win a New Year's Six Bowl and when you're able to flip a few commitments, sometimes you can just get on a hot streak and be able to reel guys in that you weren't able to before. But it was interesting to see the other night where LSU was number 1 in the rankings. Then all of a sudden Alabama landed another top prospect. And then just a couple hours later, LSU lands that linebacker Sampa, and all of a sudden they were back to number 1. So when you look across college football, this is what I'll tell you, and this is not anything that nobody knows around this area, but the teams that recruit at the highest level, you can just look at the national titles. If you're not recruiting near the top in the country, you're just not going to have a chance based on the numbers. And so, look, we'll see if this holds throughout this entire offseason. I'd like to see how this changes because it's still really, really early.
And it's verbal commitments.
Right. But right now it's looking good.
Right. Seth?
NFC South, I'm not going to go Colin Cowherd here and have this hot take where the Saints aren't even in the top 10 in the NFL. That was odd. Colin's my boy, but I don't know what he's doing there. In the NFC South, you got to say yes, but I will say the gap is pretty close. Nobody wants to talk about Atlanta. We don't like to talk about those dirty birds, but they were decimated by injuries on defense last year. They fixed the offensive line in front of Matt Ryan. They got Keanu Neal and Deion Jones back. I do think that they're going to be a problem for the Saints. Not that I'm picking them to win the division, but I think they're going to be a problem for the Saints in the NFC South. And with Coach O, I will say to his comment about only 3 LSU players being drafted, that's the lowest I think since 2003. You can take that one of 2 ways. Either they're not developing well, or I take it as that means Coach O got as much out of this talent as he could, and that's another feather in his cap, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's go back to Jeffrey on the West Bank. Jeffrey, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Jeffrey.
Thank you. I have 2 things. One is a question. First of all, what really is the value of a good athletic director at any college? And 2, I think that Scott Woodward isn't worth his weight in salt if he doesn't let that guy go. Just part ways with him. Contract, whatever.
Thank you for the phone call. Guy's athletic director, obviously oversees all the athletic programs, and he's kind of the go-to guy in terms of making those decisions, right? Hiring, firing, etc., right?
Fundraising. Fundraising is the biggest one. That's one of the reasons why
right.
they moved away from Joe Oliva is because Taft and all the big-time boosters had enough.
Right.
And it wasn't just the Will Wade thing. That might have been the straw that broke that camel's back. But first and foremost, they're a politician, which is where Scott Woodward got his start. He's got to listen. He's got to make the fan base happy. He's got to make the boosters happy, the alumni, and the board of directors. And everywhere he's gone, he's done a really good job of that. And it's just a home run with that hire. And I do have faith that, like the caller said there, Jeffrey said, that he'll make that move on from away.
Guys, David Griffin, Vice President of Basketball Operations, full control, unlimited resources. He woos Aaron Nelson, the trainer from the Phoenix Suns, to New Orleans. Been a big problem, obviously, and we talk about this show, my radio show, with, again, the training staff, the medical staff, both the Saints and the Pelicans. This is a guy that extended the careers of Steve Nash, Shaquille O'Neal, Grant Hill. Guys, your thoughts on the hiring of David Griffin, what he's done thus far, and what you anticipate in the future? How about a minute each for both of you guys?
Sure. I think it was on Tuesday night that the big news of that day was that the assistant GM of the Los Angeles Clippers, Trent Redden, decided that he was going to stay put. But that was the big news that capped off the day. But look, I think Aaron Nelson was a great hire. You mentioned the guys that he's extended their careers. And when you look at the Pelicans, since Anthony Davis got here in New Orleans, they've had the second most minutes missed due to injury and illness. And at some point or another, you have to look around and say, is it something that we're doing or not doing that's keeping our players from being able to maximize their potential and be on the floor every night? And when you see some of the problems that they've had with the auctioneer doctors, going back to someone like Delvin Breaux, and they fire him, and then they're working for the Pelicans, like, I don't see how that doesn't raise some red flags. So I think this was a step in the right direction. I'm still interested to see how David Griffin fills this front office out.
Me too. I thought it was like a free agent move for him, a big-time free agent.
I mean, that's exactly what it was, just to piggyback, because I agree with everything that you said. It does seem like David Griffin's being given close to unilateral power here. He said he made outrageous demands of Gail Benson and Dennis Schlauscher to get hired, and that was personnel, not just player personnel, but also personnel control, and he seems to be doing that. This is really exciting. This era so far, only a couple of weeks in. Keep an eye on Griffin and the Pelicans.
Yeah, I agree. Guys, great job. Seth Dunlap of WWL Radio, Andrew Doak of WLAE-TV. Got to check both these guys out on their TV and radio shows. Fantastic job. Appreciate you guys being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV. Also on Pelican Sports Television every Friday night. You can always catch us on ericasher.com where you check out all the previous episodes. You can listen to my radio show, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 in the iHeartRadio app. That's noon to 2 weekdays. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast, ericasher.com. The iHeartRadio app is also another way to catch the radio show as well. Special thanks to our guests tonight, Seth Dunlap and Andrew Doak. Also the WLA production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dodson, Richard King, Alice Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.